I always feel like hiding the grubby cover of this sketchbook, but it is what it is. I very often carry it around with me. So this is my latest sketchbook. There's one in between, but I can't find it right now, and I believe the sketchbook tour of that is already on my channel somewhere. And I did another sketchbook tour of my previous sketchbooks to see the evolution of my work and how it has changed over time. And you will be able to find that in the link in the description box, or just looking at the video from last week. So let's dive right into this sketchbook. I never start on this page as it doesn't really open flat, as you can tell. See? And this is the first spread. This was done by using Paul Rubens' those large ceramic palettes, only primary colors. So this is all like lemon yellow, Prussian blue, and Chinese red. One thing that has definitely happened to me, and I noticed this in my work, is that as I move on, I limit my palette more and more, just because that makes your work more cohesive and overall more harmonious. And moving on to the second spread, I started using my sketchbook also for sketching, and later on I moved into non-watercolor sketchbooks for sketchbook practice, because watercolor paper is not ideal for sketching. It tends to smudge quite a lot. So yes, I have a different sketchbook for sketching, and mostly that is either Moleskine or Royal Talents Art Creations, and my watercolor experimentations are done in these Etcher ones, or the Bao Hong, as I said, or the Koval, which is a really precious, very expensive one, so I try to keep it for, you know, when I'm feeling super confident. And I have these postcards which are by Hahnemühle, and sometimes I don't know where to put them, so I just put them inside my sketchbooks. This is another of those Hahnemühle really fun round watercolor paper postcards. Again, I put it in here because this side felt kind of empty, and at the same time I end up forgetting about them in a round tin, and I just think it's nice to have them somewhere where I can look over them. And this is an example of something that ended up turning into a larger painting. We were doing botanicals with my patrons that month, so there's lots of flowers in the spread, and I really liked it. And that shows that watercolor sketchbooks should be a place for experimentation and exploration, and then when you get that idea that you really like, that you think that you can build upon and enlarge in a way, then you can make a full painting of it. Only I did not make a full painting of it, I just brought it into my larger Koval sketchbook. Koval is a Polish company. They make handmade sketchbooks, and it is really precious, thick, luxuriant watercolor paper, and I will show you right now what this turned out to be in that sketchbook. So here it is. The sketchbook is quite larger than the other one. It's pretty huge, and I really like the spread, And though it's not a full painting because it's not on, well, it is a full painting actually, so this is not much of experimentation. It's more, I'd already done the test with the previous one on the Etcher sketchbook, and then I brought it into this one, which to me is more like a kind of fairy tale style book. That's what I want the final look of it to be. I like my paintings to live inside books and then occasionally to become full paintings. I think I said this in last week's video. I hope I'm not repeating myself too much. And this is another spread that's just experimenting with primary colours again, so back to limiting my palette. I think it is the Paul Rubens large ceramic palettes that we used again. I believe this was a session with my patrons in the Lunar Black tier, where we paint together twice a month. And I just wanted to show them how much you can achieve just by using primary colours. And we were also experimenting with the wet and wet technique versus wet on dry and leaving the white of the paper showing through. And this is where we were testing some of the different colours and values that you can get just by mixing those three colours. If you haven't experimented working with primary colours, I definitely think this is a super useful exercise. It really makes you understand how, as always, less is more. You don't need much. Three colours can really, you know, go a long way, a very long way. And though the spread may not look like much, to me it's one of the more experimental spreads in the sketchbook because there's a lot of work with the wet and wet versus wet and dry. So we have a lot of wet and wet and colours blending in this rabbit here. And then the edges were done with really thick watercolour, like almost like a buttery consistency. And then I allowed that to bleed into the wet areas and see what the effects of that were. And that is something that I really like. And then I did this really quick study of a portrait, and again attempting like a landscape here with a character, someone standing here, which adds that element of narration, which I always like. And then I have these large leaves over to the sides. So again, it's a bit of a mix and match of different elements that aren't really connected to one another. But then you can also have fun trying to connect them through a story. Sometimes in our sketching challenges, we add little bubbles or thoughts or lines, and we end up creating a story between the different characters and elements that are in the spread. So it's something that I love doing. I find it really fun and really stimulating. Oh yeah, and we could call this one almost an unfinished spread because, again, we have one of those postcards by Hannah Mule in here. This was a drawing done without a reference. I just sat down and without, kind of in a flux of consciousness state, very spontaneously drew this, very messy, very scribbly here. And my plan is to then go in and paint this, not having a reference photo because this just popped out of my head. I think this is a character from Peter Rabbit. I don't know what it's doing here, but in my previous sketchbook I had some Peter Rabbit characters because I had visited Beatrix Potter's cottage in the Lake District. Yes, so this will eventually become a video of how I can paint, or how one can paint without having a reference image. But for now, it's let's call it a work in progress, though it's not much work has been done on it. And let's move on to the next one. Okay, on the next one, I think this was still part of our botanicals, working on botanicals, and I went and stuck another of those postcards, because I think I did one on my own while I was testing these, and then we did the other one with the patrons. So that's why there's two that look very similar, but they're not the same actually. So where is the other one? I think it's here. Can I? Okay, yeah, I can take it out. So you can tell they are different. So that's quite interesting to look at, how the same paper and the same subject, you can get two completely different results, which is, I think, super cool and fun. It's just two different ways of painting. Probably this is more like wet and wet, more misty, and this has a bit more control in it. So what I keep noticing in the sketchbooks is that as I move on, as I keep working in the watercolor sketchbooks, and also as well in my sketching sketchbooks, which are just regular paper, quite thick paper, but regular paper, is that I lose the fear. And I think that is there with a lot of people who are approaching watercolor, and when they start working on good watercolor paper, or when they start working in a sketchbook that's made with watercolor paper, which, as I've mentioned, tend to be quite expensive, there's that fear of ruining the spread, of ruining the page, and either they don't start at all, or they're very hesitant and tend to badmouth their work a lot, tend to have a lot of negative self-talk in their minds about what they're doing. So these videos, this one and last week's one, are here also to show you how important it is to keep pushing through. And when you will go back eventually and look on your work, you will have a completely different relationship with it. You will view it in a completely different way. You will have a whole new level of appreciation for it. And indeed, I think I said this in last week's video, you will also be inspired by it. So I really urge anyone who is wanting to, of course, start a watercolor sketchbook, to do that, or to get a bunch of watercolor sheets of paper, and then maybe you can bind them together with rings, or stitch them together, whatever, clip them together. It's really up to you, but there's so many ways to do this, and it's such a joy for the heart as well. It's like I've spoken about this in the past. For me, it's also a form of active meditation. It really grounds me. It helps me get rid of anxiety and all that. So definitely something that I think anyone who is wanting to delve into watercolor should try. Again, here on this carrot, I was working with a lot of wet in the body of the carrot, and then like a buttery consistency of watercolor on the edges of it, and then leaving these white gaps of pure white paper showing through, and then working, you know, kind of loose in the leaves, and just adding 3 different values, like a lighter tone, a mid-tone over here, and then a darker one will give you that 3-dimensionality. More work like botanicals. Not quite sure what this is, some form of cactus, and more experimenting with wet and dry, and dry brush stroke also. So kind of that buttery consistency with hardly any water on your bristles is what's going on over here. Yes, I really like the carrot actually. I love, this was June 2025, so super recently. I love the idea of three, like three elements together, three people, three women, three men, whatever. And I love strawberries. I love the song by the Beatles, Strawberry Fields Forever. So I think I have, it's in my other sketchbook, the same format as this one. Again, you should find that video on this channel. You should find it for sure. Sure, it is here. I often have strawberries appear in my work. Probably not as much as rabbits. But yeah, I think the rabbits are in the small Bao Hong one. But you will see rabbits in this one too quite soon. So these are just portraits. Again, very experimental. The fear had almost gone away completely. I have to say, with the Etcher sketchbooks, I feel much more confident, or I just care less, if you know what I mean. I enjoy the process more than worrying about the result. And this one I really love. I love how I worked on this portrait over here. I was testing the colours on the side. As you see, that is another, something else that shows that I am just, you know, caring less, because I have swatches and whatnot close to the portrait that I'm painting, kind of to remind myself what I was using. And I like the fact that I have no pupil in this eye, and I do have a pupil in the other eye. I like this fish. It has some gold in it. I don't know if the camera is picking it up. And I really love this girl with her arms wide open, like she's flying. It really gives me an idea of freedom. It's a spread that I really, really love. And this is another spread where I was just playing about with loads of things. Oh, here's the rabbit that I wasn't well, I didn't remember this one was in here. And another quick, I wouldn't call this a landscape, but you know, kind of not the usual thing I would paint. I think this is more successful, one of my most successful experiments with water, just the reflections of the duck in the water. I did this really quick, and that was kind of satisfying. It was a happy surprise, because sometimes the things that you do almost on a time limit end up having a better result than the ones you spend hours and hours on. And then this girl, and this was I think it's a sweet potato that was at my mother's house, and I just thought it looked cute, and I had to paint it. And then these are just drawings. I don't know whether I planned on painting them or not, but that's what they ended up being, just drawings, and I think they'll stay the way they are, just to show you know that this is just a place where you can go and have fun and do what you want to do, really, without worrying. You don't have to show it to anyone if you don't want to. I'm showing it to you, of course, but yeah, that's the purpose of my videos, to show my art. So, but you don't have to show it to anyone if you don't want to. You can close your sketchbook, and that's that. So that's why I think that having things in a book is quite crucial, in a way. And then this one was very experimental. I don't know what I was doing here. There's some kind of guy, fisherman, there's a hand here, and then it got covered up by this fish. I think I was testing these Derwent pastel shades, which I don't think are really watercolor. They feel very chalky and powdery to me. That's a crab, of course, so this is just that, experimenting with the Derwent pastel shades. And again, more experimenting water, which, yeah, not very successful, but at the end of the day, I think I am one notch, is it a notch that you call in a ladder, rung, one rung higher in my ladder towards understanding how to paint water in watercolor, because I've been trying so much. Oh, and I think I can detect a hammerhead shark here. You can just see the outline of it, so that's that spread. And again, experimenting a lot here. We have a rooster, a lot of wet and wet and wet and dry. Hands is another thing I tend to do a lot because they're hard to draw and hard to paint, because there's so much variation between warm and cool tones within the hands because of all the underlying structures of vein, capillaries, etc. And then I have this girl surrounded by flowers. I have some, I think this might be Jane Davenport layering cake gold that you see. Oh yeah, and here come the rabbits. Rabbit obsession hit me for a while. I've done a few paintings with tons of rabbits in them. You will see them in my sketchbooks. You will see them in my work if you look back over this channel. By the way, I'm Fiona. This is Drawings in a Drawer. Welcome if you're new. I should have said that at the beginning, but anyway, if you want to keep seeing my videos, I post every Sunday, and you can just, you know, subscribe or hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of my weekly uploads. But this said, this is a sketchbook spread that I really like, and I have these bunny ears that kind of turned into a heart, and it says change inside the heart. More experimenting with water, and I think with water, I've said this before, the fussier you get, the worse it is, and I think here I was, I was guilty of that. I kind of got too much into the details, tried to get too much of those white crests or white reflections in, and I have since decided that the easiest way is to scratch them out with a knife or a scissor, with the scissors, and it works much better. And then on this other side I have this girl kind of submerged in water, like she's dreaming of the ocean, or she's part of the ocean, or she's a mermaid. It's open to interpretation, let's put it that way. And I really like the spread. I think it's fun. I think I am using a kind of different style here, more like, I wouldn't want to say comic book-like. I don't know what to say. I don't know how I would describe this style, but slightly different. As you can tell, again, I'm swatching some of the colors that I use. above. I think I was working more wet on dry in this one, which is something that I don't usually do. I prefer to work wet and wet. And then of course the background is more wet and wet. And then over here I have this girl and she has silver in her eyelids. Now the camera's not really picking that up at all, unfortunately. I think you need evening artificial light for that to show. Maybe just a little bit. You can see it in the hair a little bit better. And I also have some pearlescent colours here in there. I think when I tilt it in that direction, you can see both the silver in the eyelids and a little bit of the pearlescent colour in the petals. I like how there's a lot of blue in her, and I really like this spread. And I believe both of these were live painting sessions that we had for Patreon. So these were painted live while filming and kind of explaining the process. I always feel a little bit more kind of under pressure when I'm painting live because I'm explaining and I am, I have the camera filming live, so it's always a little bit, but it's something that I'm getting used to over the years because I've been doing it for years now. When I was working in the past with other platforms, now I'm doing it on my own. And in the beginning, I never thought I could even hold the paintbrush in my hand for how shaky my hand got, and then naturally, of course, over time, I got used to that. And this is when I got sent the Paul Rubens floral palette, and I was swatching some of my favourite colours over here on this scrap of watercolour paper, and this is the painting that I made with those paints, yeah. And you can find the painting process for this among my older videos as well. And this is the last, I believe, the last spread. Or maybe not. Oh, it is the last spread. I have like one page left. This is the last spread. This was when I was in Portugal. This was Cabo da Roca, which is the most western point of the European continent. And it was like a cliff overlooking the ocean. And I had this concept, which, I had to paint in just a few layers, kind of on the go, a bit on the go, a bit at home like in Portugal. This was this past July. I really like this concept and I would like to work on it, more, in more layers. And yeah, that's basically the end of the sketchbook. And then I also have these 3 postcards. That's just swatching, but sometimes I think just the swatching can be quite interesting to look at. And again, we have more carrots here, working with that buttery consistency along the outlines, and then like more wet and wet inside, leaving that white of the paper. The paint won't go where the paper is dry, so it's a safe thing to do. Just leave that part dry, and no matter what you do around it, if you don't get it wet, the paint won't flow there. And then here we have some oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of these, what are the beetroots. And that is the end of my sketchbook. I'll go back and just, you know, open it up to this spread, or maybe to the rabbit spread, yeah. I'll open it up here. And again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that if you want to join my online community and have all the live sketchings, the recorded tutorials, and the painting live sessions, everything is also recorded, the lives as well. I will leave all the links in the description box below this video. But most of all, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment. I always love to hear what you have to say. And I will see you all next Sunday. Bye for now.